Shalom, shalom. Call halayim log, Yahawah, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak Kodash. That's the Paleo Hebrew true names of the Heavenly Father, whom this world ignorantly calls God, in the name of Yahweh Shai, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus, all right, in the Holy Spirit. All right, so on the brother Sa'ad Hayameen coming at you with a quick lesson of the Spirit, and this one is so touching on the book of Judges. All right, so uh, a man by the name of Gideon was a prophet of Yahawah, right? And so, being that the angel of the Lord, the angel of Yahawah, came to Gideon, Gideon asked the man, to prove himself. So he proved it by putting dew on some wool, on some sheep wool, and the rest of the land was dry. And then he said, don't let your anger burn against me, but I want you know you know I want you to make the dew to not be on the wool, you know, the next morning. So it wasn't on the wool the next morning; it was totally dry. So he said, you sent me. So basically, like your word to me to deliver our people, the Israelites, out of the hand of the Midianites, which were adversaries at the time. The word of Yahweh came to Gideon. All right. So another thing was that Gideon, was charged, was told by Yahweh to take down the idols, the idol that was there, and the idol that was there was Baal, right? So he was afraid of his father's house because Gideon is from the tribe of Manasseh, the half tribe of Manasseh, right, which is under Joseph, right? So his father's house was deep. I guess that at the time they was doing something that they wasn't supposed to be doing with the idol. It was worshiping the idol, right? So, you know, that's why they was delivered into the hand of the Midianites, right? So there was to be war, and Yahweh was going to deliver the Midianites into Gideon's hands. So when Gideon he took 10 men, so they did it by night. They took down the idol, and they took down the grove next to the idol. And then the next day, the men was upset and was like, "Who did this?" And then Joash was Gideon's dad. So Joash is like, basically defending his son. He was like, "Look, you know, this idol that y'all worshiping is supposed to be y'all God, right? Let him contend with my son. Gideon. For Gideon is only one man, and he took down a so-called God. So the matter was settled in that instance. Now the next phase was to go after the Midianites. So the Most High in so many words was like, look, you got too many men to go fight this battle. Because if you take this many soldiers, then they'll say, oh, it wasn't Yahweh that delivered the Midianites. It's all this numerous army. So in order to prove that it's me that's doing this, I want you to separate the men, bring them down to the waters, and then watch how they drink the water. Right? So there were specific signs that he was looking for. So out of like 20,000 men, I think only 300 men did according to what Yahweh has said to look for. So he set those men aside. It was like only 300 men. So the rest of the men, which is like it numbered like above 10,000 men, they was pretty much sent back. So it was only 300 men with Gideon, right? So Gideon at this time, his name was Jerubbaal, right? Because he had pretty much confounded the idol Baal, right? So his name, and then he had built an altar, and it was the altar was named. They have it in here as Jehovah Salem, right? So that would be Yahawah Shalom in the Paleo Hebrew, which means the one who exists of peace, right? So Salem means peace, and of course Yahweh is he exists, right, in the Paleo Hebrew. So he named that place Gideon. You know what I'm saying? Well, actually, Yahawah did, but Gideon was like, this is the place where it's called He Who Exists, his peace. So that was an altar that was built, right? So that place, was named Yahawah, Yahawah's peace. All right, so that's the Father's house. Salakia for the noise. So the war, right? Get back to the war. So the host of the children of the east and the Midianites, they are all encamped, right, in this giant place. It's like in the valley. So they were north of Gideon in his camp of 300 men. So they all had trumpets and they all had pitchers and they had lamps, right? So what they was doing, it was following Gideon's instructions. And basically Gideon was still afraid at a point, and so this was like middle of the night, middle of the night. So they went down to the camp because under Yahweh's instructions was like, go down there and listen to what they say. And so one of the men in the camp was telling another man in the camp of the enemy of the Midianites that he had a vision, a dream, and that Yahawah would deliver all of the camp into the hands of Gideon and in the camp of Israel. So they were pretty much afraid. So that right there was confirmation for Gideon. So he went back to his camp, was like, look, we're gonna split into three parties, and we're gonna surround the camp, right? You got to remember they in a higher place because this is a valley. This is a valley, right? So they went up there, they separated, and then Gideon was like, just do as I do. So his camp, that was with him, among the men that he had, was like 100 men, right? 100 on one side, 100 on one side, and 100 on another side. So boom. So Gideon, now they blowing trumpets, they blowing trumpets, and then they said, the sword of Yahawah and Gideon, is upon you. And so the other camp, the other two camps, they did the same thing, that was with Gideon. So, and then they broke pitchers and they made like some kind of noise. And so the camp that was in the valley, the Midianites and the children of the east, they started drawing their swords out, and it was like all kind of confusion. They pretty much ended up kind of destroying themselves, right? So it was like thousands and thousands of men that fell. And so now Gideon is like pursuing them. Boom. So, while they was pursuing them, they got hungry along the way and wanted some bread. So they stopped to the men of Sukkoth, right? And asking them, basically he was like requesting bread from them because the men were faint, So they was like, man, you're chasing after these Zalmunna and Zebah, and are they really in your hands? So basically they was trying to defame Gideon, saying like, I won't believe you. We won't believe that you got them running like that. All right. So Gideon was like, look, man, when I come back, it's gonna be a specific punishment, And so when Gideon and his men went to another place called Penuel, it was the same thing, right? So they was doubting Gideon. So Gideon caught up with them dudes and overtook them, So I'm gonna read from Judge 8 chapter 8 verse 13. It says, and Gideon and the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Sukkoth, because Sukkoth was where they disrespected him, right? It said, and inquired of him, and he described unto him the princes of Sukkoth and the elders thereof, even 70 men. Verse 15, and he came unto the men of Sukkoth and said, behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom ye did upbraid me, which means to defame. You pretty much you thought it was a game, saying, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Sukkoth, right? So, if you go into that word briars, right? It's like a stick that they would use to pretty much take down the corn and separate the corn, rub the corn out. So it's like a thick timber, right? It says, and with them he taught the men of Sukkoth, so he beat their ass, All right, it says verse 17, and he beat down the tower of Penuel, and slew the men of the city. You see? So when Yahawah, whenever he decides, to punish our adversaries, he's going to do it. He's gonna send, his men the information. He's gonna send them everything that they need to make sure that that those adversaries get delivered, into our hands. You see? So even today, the judgment of Yahawah is real, and it's coming to this place, because he is, just like then, he gave them information. He gave the Israelites, our ancestors, information on how it would look. So, with that being said, he's going to discomfort, which means he's going to put fear and dread in the hearts of our adversaries, that exist this day, and have us in this modern captivity, man. He's going to stay the captivity. He's going to hold captive the captivity, you see, and deliver us from the hands of our adversaries, even to this day. So I was just reading, I just began in the book of Judges and got to this point. I thought it funny, how all of the adversaries, were delivered into the hands of Gideon and 300 men. But, of course, at some point, Gideon called on, I believe it's Naphtali and Zebulun, the tribes, and they came in and did some things. And so, and he even gave them credit for it. Whereas, they were upset with him at first. He said, man, look what you just did, man. You beheaded 2 kings. You see? So, basically, thank you. You know what I'm saying? And this is for our people, So, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are based in wisdom, because what Gideon and those 300 men did, over that valley, was wisdom, man. Solomon's battles, if you go back and look at those battles, and it's wisdom, man. There's like a book called I think it's The Art of War, Sun Tzu or something like that. And then if you read the book of Maccabees, that's more wisdom right there. Sometimes, in order to win on the battlefield, you got to go in wisdom. I mean, anytime you into a battle, you got to go in wisdom. Wisdom precedes the things that are carnal, that are physical, that you can see. First, you gotta have your lights on upstairs, you see. And so, in order to make sure that light is as bright as it could be, you gotta be reading these scriptures. You gotta be concerned with prophecy, the word of Yahawah B'Shem Yahushai, because that wisdom is gonna go a long ways, man. And it shall, knowledge and wisdom, is the stability of our time, because all else is vanity, it's fleeting, it's folly, man. And it's destruction. So, if you have pride, you think you know everything, and you trying to go by carnal means of acquiring something, it's gonna fail every time, man. You might get some carnal things, but you're gonna lose your soul. All right. So if you want to tap into the truth, and you want to tap into what's good for you, this better life is the word, man. So with that being said, facing the east, Call Halayim La, Yahawah, Bahashem, Yahawah Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, Kwam Yasha'Allah. Into this wicked place, man, this captivity, this land, this place they call America, you know, abab ball, man. All right. To the hopefully elect, you know, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, wake up, man. You know. Shalom.